latest featured virtual event, a fireside chat with IES Abroad CEO Dr. Gregory Hess and scholarship alum and film festival winner Kiubon Kokko. We are so glad you all could join us today. And now for a quick introduction. Dr. Gregory Hess began his tenure with IES Abroad as the new president and CEO in August 2020. Prior to joining IES, he served as president of Wabash College for 7 years. Among his many achievements at Wabash was the development of Wabash X, a co-curricular initiative in the areas of democracy and public discourse, digital arts and human values, global health and the Center for Innovation, business, and entrepreneurship. Gray has also served as a consultant for Honda Motors of North America and was a member of the Ohio Governor's Council of Economic Advisors. He has also served as a visiting scholar at Federal Reserve banks across the country, as well as the Bank of Japan, Korea University, the IMF Institute, and the Hoover Institution. Prior to Wabash, he served as Dean of the Faculty and Vice President of Academic Affairs at Claremont McKenna College in California. While at Claremont, he served as the James G. Boswell Professor of Economics. Kiubon Kokko is the winner of IES Abroad's 2020 Study Abroad Film Festival. He is also a Nantes Fall 2019 Scholarship alum. Kiubon is currently a senior at Claremont McKenna College, majoring in media studies, in addition to running a wedding film company named 1210 Films, which he plans to pursue fully after graduation. You will find a link to 1210 Films as well as the 2020 Study Abroad Film Festival recording in our event chat room. Welcome, Greg and Kiubon, to today's Fireside Chat.
Well, thanks so much, Jody. Let me just give an extravagant welcome for everyone who's on this Zoom presentation. It's really wonderful that people remain connected to IES Abroad and to celebrate the great accomplishments of young, talented students. And that brings us to Kiubon. Let me also allow me to give you my, my personal congratulations and praise for winning the 2020 Film Festival and for what I thought was just a thoughtful and tender and strong creative project that you put together, Film for Us. So once again, just our deep congratulations for that.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, let me just ask you some questions. So you studied abroad in Nantes, France, and what inspired you to study abroad, and what were your expectations for the experience, maybe before you left?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, thanks so much, guys, for coming and hearing us and having this event with us. I appreciate you taking an interest in watching my film and also taking an interest in IES Abroad. And so your question, Greg, what really inspired me is just to change, because you kind of know that when you go somewhere you don't know all the answers to, you're just bound to change. And that kind of brings me back to a time when, I think it was on day 2 of France, we were looking for a cell phone company in the city, and we went to like every single one, and they just didn't come out to what we expected. We spent like an hour going through every every tram line trying to get to the right cell phone thing, so we have the right SIM card so we can contact our families. And something like that, where we had no idea which cell phone place to go to, what was the best one, where we didn't have all the answers when things were awkward. That really made us learn the tram system and really made us learn the bus system. And something like that is kind of the reason why I wanted to study abroad, knowing that when I don't know the answers, I'm bound to grow.
All right. Well, let's hope you also got a cell phone out of it. How'd that go? Did you end up with a cell phone by the end of this?
So I was actually with my friend, and I was just going to use my U.S. carrier, and he was going to get one for him. So he did end up getting one, but he needed the help of his host dad. So we gave up after like our 4th sample place, and then he got help from his host dad.
All right. Well, so you made this wonderful film, and I know that you think of that film as kind of a representation of of your experience, but how did making the film itself change your experience? How did it have an impact on the experience itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a lot of power in reflecting. And whenever I was in France, I spent like 30 minutes, maybe 2 hours tops, journaling every morning just about what that day was before. And being able to reflect in a more visual manner when I was going through all the footage, that really just made me more grateful for the experience. And it made me think, gosh, I wish I would have gave up more almost, like, because my time is over now in France, but and it was a great time, but I kind of wish I was more present. Not that I wasn't present, but it made me think like, okay, if I ever get an opportunity like this in the future, I'm really gonna have to be even more present and really lean into the people around me.
That's well, that's a pretty terrific explanation, Kiubon. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
So Jody was saying that you worked at Claremont McKenna College in the past,
That's
which is
right.
great. I'm sure very few people here know what that school is.
Yeah, I
So
can spell it. I can spell it still. Yeah.
it's very relieving not having to explain, saying, yeah, I go to Claremont, small school in California. So
Yeah.
I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about that time and what led you to IES and everything you did prior to IES Abroad.
Well, the thing that kind of inspired me, and boy, I'm dialing way back about, going to Claremont McKenna College. It was a college that really, the time really, focused about public life, and that's something that I'd really dedicated a lot of my life to. My career started off at the Federal Reserve Board as an economist, and that gets you into the Washington D.C. bubble, and sometimes, it's hard enough to break the bubble of DC, but you always carry a little bit of that with you along the way. So along my career path, I felt really fortunate. I was able to teach at top undergraduate places, both in the United States, but also in the United Kingdom, not just at the undergraduate level, not just at the PhD level, but also in business schools. I spent a year teaching at Carnegie Mellon, the business school, for a year, and I taught a term at London Business School as well. So I was very fortunate as part of my career to have, this kind of embrace of public life, but also to be able to, articulate it both as an academic and even outside the academic world on an international basis. As Jody partly mentioned, I was fortunate to spend some time at the IMF, do projects for the World Bank, Bank of Japan, Bank of England, and spend about 6 or 7 years working for Honda Motors of North America. And that once again just gave me this great infusion of love and joy for kind of the international education piece. So I very much enjoyed my time at Claremont McKenna College. And at some point, I thought that, while academic papers and doing, academic life was interesting, trying to get people to work together was also a fascinating puzzle, and obviously, as just like IES Abroad, Claremont McKenna College talks a lot about leadership, and a lot about leadership is not just figuring out how to manage people, but also, how to sometimes do the right thing while you're managing those people. So ultimately, that called me to work in kind of academic administration. When I left CMC to go to Wabash College, it was also one of these spectacular opportunities, and both at Claremont McKenna and Wabash, I spent a lot of time working on programs to expand students' opportunities to get outside. At Claremont McKenna, I started the Silicon Valley program. That was kind of my had been on my wish list for a while, and managed to get that off the ground, as long as a program with Yonsei University. At Wabash, we did similar things, both in terms of fundraising, so that every student would have the ability to go on an international experience, either as part of an immersion course, which Wabash College does in a very holistic way. That they run probably 10 to 15 a year, but in addition, also to find support for study abroad opportunities as well. So when the IES opportunity came up, I thought, well, this was just kind of like just kind of a perfect coincidence. It was an opportunity to kind of live that public life, but to be able to expand my love for international education. I'll just stop for 1 second. And truth be told, I did study abroad. I studied abroad at the London School of Economics for a year. It changed my life. It changed my wife's life when she studied abroad, and it changed both my daughters' lives too when they studied abroad. So I'm a big believer in the power of study abroad.
For sure, me too, Greg. And
Yeah.
thanks for setting up those programs. I know I had no idea that you did those, and I have friends that have
Mhm.
done the Yongsi and also the Silicon Valley, and they had such great times. And you
Yeah.
said once the IS Abroad position kind of opened up in that time, was
Mm.
that pre-COVID?
Oh yes, yeah, no, I leaned into IS Abroad. These searches do take some time, and I'd agree just to come to IS Abroad, just before COVID started. In fact, I was at a conference, a Federal Reserve conference in New York, when you could slowly feel it creep along you, and so we headed back to campus as quickly as we could. But yeah, I did choose it then, and obviously, when you take a position, not everything starts the way you think it will be, and I don't think anybody at the time thought it would be as long lasting and severe. I know some people did, but not everyone, and so have been able to soldier through that. I've had the chance to learn how to be much more remote. I'm not great at Zoom. Hopefully, this is going okay, everyone, but I do spend a lot of my time on Zoom these days. It is rather interesting trying to learn about a culture of an organization when you don't physically get to see people or work with them directly. I've met about in person probably about 7 to 10 of the employees, since most of what we're doing is remote right now. And of course, we have centers around the world, and I work with them remotely. So it is a challenge, but it's one certainly I'm up for. And I'll tell you this, I've been just so deeply and profoundly impressed by the IES culture, the resilience of the people here, and their absolute dedication to the importance of study abroad, and the deep desire to relaunch it as soon as the world reawakens. So so I started pre-COVID, and this was not quite unquote, this is not quote unquote the job I signed up for, but sometimes it's the job you get, and I'm having I think we're having some great success. Notwithstanding the fact that it's still hard to, you can't really get students abroad right now. But thanks for asking. So what, everybody has in life, an aha moment, and, where suddenly things clarify and things, come into better focus. And I had one of those moments when I was studying abroad. I had like an aha moment. Tell me if you had an aha moment when you were studying abroad, and if so, what was it?
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure there's a bunch of moments I could pick from, and I think the one moment would probably be a little backstory first. I definitely don't have the greatest relationship with the concept of home.
Hmm.
Columbus, Ohio is my home, but sometimes I don't feel like that's really the greatest home. And Claremont, as much as I love Claremont, it didn't really feel like home. And so when I was in Nantes, close to the end of the program, I had this overwhelming sense to just run. I don't know what was. I was just walking back to the center, and I just wanted to run. I don't know why. I just kind of felt it in my body to run. And for those that have been to Nantes, there's this little park right outside the center
Yeah.
called Kiubon, and it's just like this little nice little park. And I just ran straight through it. I just hearing the leaves and just feeling the wind slap my face, and that moment I kind of just thought maybe this place was home. Maybe while I was here, I felt super supported by the IES staff and all my friends here, and maybe it was home. And that was towards the end, and maybe it would have been good to kind of feel that moment maybe before, maybe earlier on in the program. But I think feeling it at the end was definitely better than nothing. So that was probably my aha moment.
Well, that's great. That ties in. I think we've talked before about how musicals have inspired your life, but that is the close to the Wizard, the Wizard of Oz. That
Mhm.
finding that place at home, and I probably never shared this story with anyone, but now I'll do it on Zoom, which is actually I'll be 100% honestly truthful with you, Kiubon. I had a dream when I was studying abroad in London in my flat in the basement that
Mhm.
and the one phrase that sticks out from that thing from that dream was the phrase, "It's time to run." Hand to God. So
Wow.
it must be something that inspires us to go on and face new challenges and seek new things out there. So I appreciate both for you sharing the story with everybody, but also just how it personally resonates with me. as well.
Sure.
You created, so, not only do you, create this beautiful film, that was just touching and powerful, but you also put together a short thank you a film for the sponsors of IES Abroad who help support scholarships for our organization. And maybe you can just tell us about what scholarship meant to you and how it was helpful for you in pursuing something that is ultimately been so meaningful to you.
Yeah, scholarships are super important to me. I think a lot of my life has been greatly impacted by scholarships. For example, I wouldn't be at Claremont if it wasn't for scholarships, and if I wasn't at Claremont, then I wouldn't have studied abroad. And that's just crazy to me, And through the help of study abroad and through the scholarships that I got, I was able to have a life-changing semester. And I wouldn't be talking to you now. I wouldn't know that you worked at Claremont McKenna, Greg, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I'm super grateful. There are people that don't know me and they're willing to support me and willing to root me on and root my other friends on that also studied abroad. And I kind of look up to you, Greg, because you worked at a higher institution. That's super cool. And if I ever had the opportunity to do that, I would make it like obligatory for everybody to study abroad. I don't know how much power you can do, but at least for me, um, I would make that decision. And that probably wouldn't be an easy thing to do, especially because there would be a lot of need for scholarships.
Yeah.
And it'd be really cool for me to be in a position when I'm older to perhaps donate and perhaps give back this organization and also be able to support a lot of students that want to study abroad that perhaps couldn't.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of young people want, when you ask them what kind of superpower do you want, they're looking for invisibility or the ability to, to jump high or, or be strong. But I'm glad the superpower you seek is to get everyone to study abroad as well. Maybe that's something else we'll share because, as I said, it does have a fundamental impact on people's lives and for this, great generation of students that you belong to, that my daughters belong to as well. We need those changed lives to go out and further kind of change the world in ways that, in ways that are intrinsic to the values that your generation has. So that's one of the things that we are very, very much, dedicated to do, as as my time here unfolds. So you've done some really wonderful things, and I know that at some point you'll show the film, but is there anything else you want to share about at this point before you maybe ask me another question or two?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with you how this generation with study abroad, just like your daughters,
Yeah.
definitely super important for us to do this. And I'm curious, what do you think lies ahead for IS Abroad in the future?
Well, right now, we're still kind of in pandemic, in a little bit of the pandemic issues. So we kind of talk both about surviving and thriving all in the same breath, which means that we're making sure that IES remains strong. And for those of you out there, IES has kind of a balance sheet that's built to last. So we're definitely going to continue to be here, and we can out survive anyone else in the business. But not only are we making sure that we keep the organization strong throughout, we're also thinking about how to improve it. Just recently, and maybe the timing's perfect. That we have an academic consortium that underpins IES Abroad. That's how we maintain our the reputation as having the highest quality academics in the study abroad world. And that consortium actually does an audit from time to time to look at our courses, see what we're missing, how we can be better. And these are members, volunteer members of faculty from who make up our consortium, which are the major flagship institutions, the top liberal arts colleges, and the top private universities. And these faculty went together and dug through the curriculum and looked at syllabi and reviewed everything, much like they do on a continuous basis, but they took it from a more macro level and said, what are the things that we're missing? So we've been able to help put together in this part of this curriculum task force is to try to build some kind of clusters of courses that are more kind of thematically oriented to the challenges that your generation will face and will have to solve over your lifetime. That includes things such as sustainability, issues of general well-being, issues of essentially broader, health issues, global health issues. And we think that ultimately by making the courses thematic will allow our consortium of colleges that does support us, allow them to help internationalize their curriculum through these types of courses, but also to infuse students who may not, say for example, in a course in sustainability, maybe they're not environmental studies majors, but obviously they know that they need to have a fluency and level of intellectual information so that they can, in their lifetimes as leaders, go on and help and create some positive change. So that's actually all been approved, and we actually received a generous gift to start piloting these courses just next year. So we've been working on the curriculum, which is obviously the fundamental bedrock of study abroad, and which is the academic piece of it. We're also working a little bit on what I call internationalization. That's to make sure that not only when we bring U.S. students to our centers abroad, that we make sure that there are opportunities for you not only to meet with, say, for example, when you went to Nantes, that you met people from, from France and Nantes, but potentially to ultimately see if we can bring students from around the world to also visit these centers as well. So not only do you get just a deep immersive experience that you received, obviously, in your experience in Nantes, but also you get a broad experience too, as you connect to different, people from different countries, different nationalities. And so the internationalization conversation we're having at IES is to find a way to knit together this kind of network of centers in a way that allows, more than just a bilateral flow of, apologies for the sound like an economist for a second, but, U.S. going to France, and then flying them back, but to have a more kind of dynamic flow of students overall. Finally, blue skies, I'll tell you, we want to make sure that we start thinking hard about what a virtual platform means. This is, but just one example of what a virtual set of outreach to alumni and to people can be. But obviously, we've learned a lot about how we can virtually deliver material. Part of it that was, with duct tape and baling wire, as we were trying to repatriate students home. But there are areas where we think virtual is going to, continue to be strong. We will continue to provide some virtual content to students just as a way to make their visits to their time at IES centers more efficient, but also to think about things like internships. If you're a student, if you were a junior now and you were going to try and do an internship over the summer, whether you're looking for an international internship or domestic one, almost all of them are going to be virtual right now. And so we want to make sure that we help set the standard as to what the type of virtual internship, what's the kind of best practice can be, and to see if we can stay ahead in terms of our ability to provide the highest quality internship experiences internationally, but make sure we can maintain that even in a virtual world. So we've got some work to do. I think we're going to be busy, but as I said, the organization has been extremely resilient, and I've been super proud of all the hard work they put in to get us ready to thrive when the pandemic ends and the world reawakens.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely excited to see all those changes. I feel like although my experience was great, it would have been even cooler if we were able to meet students from like other countries, like you were saying. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah. So that's one of the big topics out there. So, I'm sure, so you're a senior now, Kiubon, which I'm sorry to say, you're going to have to get really good at answering this question in your life. Maybe you've already practiced it a dozen times already. So what are your plans for the future? How do you, how are you going to take, this great wealth of experience, this great educations that you've received, and, what's out there for you?
Yeah, the future is vast. It's like, I like to think of it like a universe of possibility, and I'm like stepping into that because I could go, there's so many things I could do. But right now I applied to be a Fulbright fellow. So I'm crossing my fingers for that. Hopefully that could happen. Not sure.
Good.
And I'm also had backup plans, of course. And I plan to always have my wedding film company and kind of doing that. And because it's like a self startup, then I'm always working on that. And of course, looking at other jobs and stuff like that. And I'm sure that my study abroad experience will be able to help me, because like I was saying before, when you don't really know the answers and you just have to really just sit with the awkwardness, and you just know that you're going to be okay. If I get the Fulbright fellowship, I'm sure I'll look for a cell phone somewhere, and I'll be able to
All right. Well, maybe someday you'll have a business that's about how to get dropped in the middle of nowhere and figure out how to use a cell phone. When you
For
figure it
sure.
out, let me know, because I've never figured it out. But I'm sure when I do answer, it'll be somebody about your vintage. So, but no, that's a great answer. It sounds like your study abroad experience, has had a deep impact in your, ability to figure things out, which means just to ask good questions and
Sure.
to just get after it until you until you find the answers. Well, Kiubon, I've asked you some of the things I was hoping to, and of course, we'll stay connected. We'll stay connected, well into our lives. But I wanted to pass this on to Dawn now to see if she has, if there are any questions out there in the audience who want to ask you some questions.
Yeah, we have put a few questions. We got a few questions from some folks who registered. A lot have been answered during the 30 minutes of your conversation. This one, I'll start off for you, Greg. An alum was wondering, and you answered this a little bit, how is IES adjusting to the virtual exchanges, and what can alumni do to help?
Boy, it's a great question. Well, most of our international internships, have mostly been, arranged through centers with, small and medium firms in those areas that allow students to do a lot of language development, to, get a very kind of deep cultural experience. In the virtual realm, we're just learners along with everyone else right now. We do have that experiential piece that will allow students to be that kind of virtual internship. And I'll tell you, next week I have a meeting with the internship group for a couple of hours to talk about, how do we continue to make those internships stronger, and particularly in the virtual world. My guess is that the way that alums can help us is to help us, help source us opportunities for students, because you can never have enough opportunities to put in front of students, because really it's just a match issue, which is how do you find the student who matches this potential experience the best. The other one is ultimately we'll be looking for I think in the long run we'll be looking for almost kind of virtual mentors for some of these students who are in our internship organization, and ultimately to maybe have some of our alums, people attached to IES Abroad, to find a way to maybe just do some personal conversations with them. It could be kind of coaching, could also just be just short talks, or an evening where you do Q&A about different career paths and the rest. So ultimately I'd like to use this virtual realm to help knit alums to the current student base, so that there can be just some exchange of information about the types of opportunities out there, and to allow IES alums to get that real tactile feel that the great things that they experience at IES Abroad are still going on at IES Abroad now.
Great. And then Kiubon, I have a question for you as well. Someone would like to know, when you return to Nantes in the future, how would you spend your first day there?
I am super excited to return to Nantes. I don't know when that will be, but I would be very disappointed if I'm on my deathbed and I never got to. The first thing I'm doing is I'm knocking on Loic's door and seeing where he's at, and hoping. Loic is my little host brother, for you who have seen the film, and I'm so excited to see where he'll be, because that dude is just a ball of energy, and I can just see him going really far. So I would love to spend a day with him and see where he'll be in his life.
Great. And then another sort of question to that, Anna would love to hear in your words, what makes Nantes such a special place for study abroad?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Nantes will bring you the people who think the same as you, if that makes sense. Because Paris is great. We all love Paris. But when you go to Nantes, you will know that the people who are also there with you, they will have the same mindsets, where you are there for the language immersion, and you are there to really dive deep into your study abroad experience. And you can always go back to Paris and visit when you're older, but a place like Nantes, you'll never live in ever again. I think that's super, super special. And just like the town and the culture there and the people. Like I was surprised that people smiled at me in the streets, and you can't find that in Paris. You know, like when I would walk past people, it's just it means a lot to me. You know.
Great. Chuck has a question for you, Greg. I don't know how deep you want to get into talking about IES's sort of revenue and expenses during the pandemic.
Sure.
But in terms of sort of what virtual learning will look like once on-site learning becomes available again, and in short, what does IES look like a year or two from now?
Oh, IES year for 2 from now should look a lot like it used to look. You know, we will have students, you know, dot around, you know, our 30 plus centers, you know, around the world, and students will be having those kind of life-changing experiences everywhere. Some of the ways we'll probably continue to do virtual, I don't know if we call it education, but certainly we'll front load a lot of the material that students do in orientation in person. We'll probably do a lot more of that virtually, so students can have some additional experiences throughout their time there. I would expect that we will try to ultimately provide some kind of virtual content that students can take while they're there. We obviously don't want to interfere with their immersive experience, and we don't want them staring at their screens when they can be out there, enjoying the life and the culture that surrounds them. But we do want to make sure that if we can provide some flexibility in their day, that we do provide some kind of limited virtual content. I will say this, we also are getting some interest from some of the largest, some of our largest schools that do send us students, because ultimately, our hope at IES Abroad is to continue to democratize study abroad, which means that we want more students to be able to get that experience of a foreign culture, being in a foreign classroom, all these things that we appreciate so much about study abroad. And what we're finding is that a lot of these universities have students who, while they have an interest in studying abroad for family reasons or some other, do not have the ability to study abroad or participate in a foreign classroom, or to get the kind of unique and the truly unique courses that you can only get through an IES type experience. And so one of the things they've asked us to do is can they think about creating an international classroom virtually for them, so students who for legitimate reasons are unable to travel abroad and spend a semester at any time during their undergraduate experience, but somehow could create a virtual experience for them like that, so they can take courses with an international set of students. And in some ways, IES would become like the matchmaker to help put this together. And obviously, we're well suited to do that, given our presence around the world. This might be something that we'll pursue, and that could be something that would be added value for, and a way to democratize and internationalize, education around the world.
Great. I will sort of one last round for questions if anyone has anything they want to ask.
Is this the lightning round? Is this the lightning round?
It's sort of the lightning round. Jody asked you, Kiubon, you mentioned that you had applied for a Fulbright scholarship. What do you hope to achieve from that scholarship, and where do you plan on going if you receive it?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jody. I applied to be an ETA in Taiwan. ETA means English Teaching Assistant. So I would be teaching middle schoolers, elementary schoolers English. And I think that'd be really cool for me to be able to spread the language immersion, just because I think learning language is super important. And perhaps maybe those kids in Taiwan who learn English could maybe study abroad in America one day. And also I'm learning and hoping to be able to be in a space where I don't really know what's going on. And I think although it can be quite stressful, it would lead to a lot of growth.
Well, you will be among a lot of IES alums who are Fulbright scholars. So
there you go.
You will
I
be
hope so.
lot.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Okay, I am going to turn things over to Jennifer. Thank you again,
Great.
Greg and Kiubon, for the Q&A. And Jennifer will end this for us.
Thank you indeed, both of you, for sharing this 40-some minutes with us. I am just always so inspired by what our alumni, both young and old, have done in their careers in the world. And Kiubon, it's just a pleasure to hear about your experiences and your successes so far and where you plan to go in the future. Of course, we have our fingers crossed that you're going to get that Fulbright. Last week we had Jack Aldrich, a Durham alum, speaking on one of these virtual events, and he talked about reverse mentors, and that we older folks should be looking to the millennials and the Gen Z for inspiration and advice on what to do. And I am truly inspired to see what young people are choosing to do. They're not usually just choosing one career, but actually many. And I hope everyone here heard IES alumna, Madrid alumna Amanda Gorman deliver a fabulous poem during the presidential inauguration yesterday. So look forward to seeing what so many of you do. And now, Gani, I'll ask you to push out a wonderful video that Kiubon mentioned before that he has put together to share with us. Thank you again.
My name is Kiubon Kokko. I go to Claremont McKenna College, and I studied abroad in Nantes, France. Study abroad was probably the most dynamic 3.5 months of my entire life. I remember the moment I met my host family. I knew I was in for a treat. They were so loving and so kind and so caring towards me. And my host siblings were hilarious, and it was always a good time with them. One night for dinner, my little host brother, Loic, he made me galettes. And he's only 9 years old, and he knew how to cook. And I found that fascinating. And I felt very cared for in that moment by this little 9-year-old boy. And not only that, I met some of the greatest friends that one could ask for. We shared so many meaningful conversations together, and we made memories that would definitely last a whole lifetime. We shared moments that we would truly hold on to forever. I knew they were special to me because on the day that we said goodbye, I found myself crying my eyes out. 3.5 months in Nantes would not have been possible without the help of my donors. I know we've never met, but I want to say thank you. For you to be so generous to someone you've never met before, it truly says a lot about your character. In France, I grew in so many ways, and the person that left on that airplane was definitely not the person that arrived. So, I want to say thank you again. Thank you for your altruism and your generosity, and for the greatest 3.5 months of my life.
Thank you all for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.